thank you so much for having me. And Howie, one other correction, I am from Long Beach right now. I'm living in Long Beach as opposed to Merrick. Very close, but...
Did I say what? Did I say Merrick?
You said Merrick.
I did? Let's start over.
Very better.
I am the voice of Long Beach. Halftime, Howie.
Welcome to another edition of Broadcasting on the Beach with Halftime Howie, and my film critic and good friend, my co-producer, is going to interview Josh Mowry, right here from Long Beach, New York, who's had a very interesting acting career, and they're going to delve into that from his beginnings in Cleveland, Ohio, a city I love because I have great ties to Cleveland, Ohio, right up to his latest film with the legend, Al Pacino. So to hear all about Josh Mowry, a local Long Beach actor, I give it to Rocco Pasafume.
Thank you very, very much, Howie, and welcome to the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Pleasure.
To start us off, talk about how did you get into acting and what made you want to become an actor?
Well, that is, as I was explaining to you off camera there, was kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it brief. I was one of those athletes who thought this was the last thing I would do, but in terms of growing up a little bit, I guess, I discovered, actually with some opportunities that came my way, but I discovered that athletes and actors have so much in common because of the focus factor. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was blocking out the third wall when I was playing Little League Baseball at 6 years old and going to the free throw line, trying to hit a shot to tie a game. I was able to block out. And as an actor, it's all about two things, focus and listening. Because you can't really react honestly if you're not listening to the other actor. And it's an ensemble thing. And I always love that type of scenario where it's not about me, it's about the group, it's about making the best production possible with not only myself, but with everybody. So that's how I discovered the acting bit, because that was the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing in high school.
Thank you very much. Talk about what, you've done work on various television shows like General Hospital and Days of Our Lives. Talk about what was it like to work on soap operas and TV series, and you said that you work doing a stand-in work basically. So talk about how you, what was it like? What were the perks of working those type of jobs?
Well, the great thing about the soap opera world was the fact that it was so organized, and it was a great training ground for actors when they first were starting out. I was relatively new to the film and television business. Came out of Cleveland, did a lot of plays and some commercials, but never really did episodic television or soap operas. But as far as the soap world that I was lucky enough to jump into on General Hospital and Days of Our Lives back in the 80s, it's very structured. 3 camera. Oh, my son is just not leaving me alone. Excuse me for that. Okay. So anyway, it was just a great training ground. It reminded me a lot of the theater because it was very systematic, and it went from one scene to the next scene to the next, and that was part of the story. Whereas in television and film, they jump around a lot. They'll start maybe one of the last scenes, and then they'll go to the front. And this is very continual, and it was just such a great experience, and I was very sad to see the soap world dry up. I thought it was going to be able to stay alive because the housewives were going to work at the time, but the college kids were the new audience. And I was in college in the early 70s, and I scheduled all my classes around The Young and the Restless because they had 3 or 4 hot girls on that show, and we were just, my whole fraternity were glued in front of the TV. But then the reality shows came along, which were very inexpensive to produce, and that's what did the soaps in ultimately.
Talk about you've gotten out of soap operas and TV series now, and you're doing you're doing feature films. The latest one coming out is definitely very interesting. It's going to be one directed by Barry Levinson, who did The Wizard of Lies, and you're going to be working with Al Pacino on that. Talk about this project that's coming out.
Well, this came my way through my agent because I was a coach. I've coached baseball, basketball, and football, and they were actually looking for authentic coaches and players. All the players that you're going to see in this film representing the Penn State team when Al was coaching his last season, these guys were actual D1 football players, and they were unbelievable, and they were looking for guys, the coaches, also to have that same experience. So my interviews were not actually scripted, but they wanted to see me in a situation where I was starting a practice and I was working with the linebackers and I was working with the quarterbacks and position players. And I think a lot of guys fell by the wayside when they were supposed to, portray the fact that they were actual coaches. And the fact that I was able to work with Al Pacino up in the booth a lot, because later on, the last few years of Al's or Joe Paterno's career, he wasn't doing really well, so he'd be up in the booth with my character, Ron Vander Linden, offensive coordinator Galen Hall, and his son, Jay Paterno, and we were calling down signals down to the coaches down on the field. And it was so nice because the camaraderie was so great. After we stopped Illinois from going in for a touchdown right before halftime to tie a game, we were jumping up and down and hugging, and oh my God, it was just great. And then just to be on the football field and to see Al Pacino come out as Coach Paterno. I mean, he totally embodies physically and the speech, the whole deal. He was absolutely marvelous, and it felt like I was on an actual D1 college football field. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Something I'll never forget.
And when do you think it's going to come out, and where will we see this?
Well, this is an HBO production directed by Barry Levinson. The original slated release date for HBO is going to be in February. Now, this is hearsay now. This is what I'm hearing. But as it turns out, the two high-ranking officials at Penn State are going to be released in December. And so I'm thinking, along with a lot of other people that I've talked to around the movie, it'd be a perfect time to bring the movie in, because there's going to be a lot of publicity about these guys being released from prison, and the talk of the town and the talk of the movie business. If this came out in December when these guys are released, it'd be the perfect time to open up an HBO project.
What is the most thing that surprised you most about working in the entertainment industry?
Surprised me the most. Oh, that's a good one. Actually, how easy and how fun it was. And again, going back to my sports route and being prepared. And I've always been a good listener. I mean, this is kind of an old school technique right now, because now I talk to some of these millenniums and they're already thinking about the next line that they're going to say. And I can always tell that. And I've had a couple issues on stage with actors when they're not listening to me, because what happens is, if you're not listening to the way I present a line, you can't react honestly to it. So I found that to be surprising, and that's when I really felt this is where I belong, because I'm a little too old to be playing for the Yankees, so this is my next best option.
Really briefly, what environment do you feel like better suits you, working in TV or in film?
That's a good question. Again, film, they jump around a lot. Television is a little more structured. I actually enjoy both of them. I mean, I can separate myself and go from the beginning to the end or the end to the beginning, because each day is like a little play unto itself. And when you get those sides of anywhere from 5 to 15 pages, working probably 3 to 7 scenes, those scenes are close to being in some kind of an order. And it's like I said, it's like a play unto itself each day. And hopefully it meshes very well, and that's what you hope for.
Where do you see yourself going in your entertainment career?
Well, I have 2 things going on here. I have a family that is extremely talented. My wife is a graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. My son is presently at the Barrow Group, which is one of the foremost theatrical film schools in Manhattan, right off 36 and 8. And my daughter just did a commercial with, and now his name escapes me, but anyway, she did a major commercial for a British telecom company. And she is now expressing that interest as well. She has a very good natural temperament about her. She's also an athlete. My son was an actor all through high school and has done a lot of music and stuff. So as far as acting, I'm always on that hunt. But I also would like to start a management company somewhere down the line with my family and market us not only as a family but individually as well, and maybe take on a few more clients. But it's a fascinating business, and it's all about the hook. It's all about who you know, who you meet, who you enjoy being with. You know, sometimes you, depending on the strength of the individual, you might have to placate a little bit, but it's kind of a twofold deal. I'm looking at myself, but I'm also trying to get my kids where they need to go, and my wife as well.
Thank you very much for sharing your stories. You definitely have a great, fascinating career, and we definitely wish the best for you and your family, and just to keep having incredible work to get a hold around.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Rocco, for having me.
And thank you.
And Howie, my good friend. Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anytime, guys.